In this training, you will be learning about the different types of 3D design that you can do in Smilefy. Smilefy offers a range of different types of 3D design, each serving a specific clinical purpose based on the stage of the treatment, patient's needs, and final outcome. Let's break it down and start with the Additive 3D shells mockup. Alright, I have a case here and we did a shells mockup for this patient using the automated 3D design workflow. Now I'm going to show you what are the files that you need when performing a gingivectomy or a crown lengthening case, and we'll open the patient files, purple icon. Inside you'll see some pictures. The frontal picture here, it's the only mandatory file, but if you do have additional files, pictures, you can add these. Then we also have a facial scan for this patient, the intraoral scan upper and lower, and since we're going to create a treatment plan for gingivectomy or crown lengthening, we need the CBCT DICOM files. Now let's continue. Normally we go ahead and calibrate these files. We already calibrated them. And I just wanted to show you that when it comes to the calibration, apart from calibrating the picture with the intraoral scan, the only other file that you will need to calibrate at this point is the facial scan. So here you can see the calibration with the facial scan. Okay, and then if you select digital patient here, we should be able to see both models oriented in occlusion, upper and lower, and this is how it looks like. All right, now I'm gonna go next and close the case so that I can open the shells design. Now this design type focuses on visual simulation, adding volume digitally over the existing patient's teeth. So here is the design. I did the automated 3D design workflow, and so this is the workflow that you will need to select if you're trying to do shells mockup. I'm not going to go through the workflow for the 3D design shells because we discussed this during our second week. I basically showed you the automated 3D design workflow step by step. The only thing that I did different, I'm going to go back for a moment here, was to select the occlusal curve vestibular. You can see it's not set exactly on top of the incisal edges of the anterior teeth, and the same for the posterior teeth. That's because we want to add volume, right, over the existing patient's teeth, and it's not just the patient's teeth, but it's also over the gum. And so it is commonly used for motivational test drive or as a gingivectomy or crown lengthening guide, as it is for this case. Now I'm gonna go next. All right, and this is the 3D design that we generated. Now, if you select 3D layers, because we added the CBCT, you should be able to see the different segments. For example, here we have the segments for the CBCT maxilla. Okay, so you can see the roots of the upper teeth, and if you add the bone, we can add the bone for the upper and lower, or just the upper. And this allows you to do a perianalysis over the existing patient's teeth and bone. And in 3D layers, you can also see, you can preview the maxilla design teeth. Hold on, because here we have the shells mockup already generated. Right, and you can see how much we changed. And if you want to do a peri-analysis with the cross section, you can select advanced cross section, and here you have the cross section analysis that you need to set on. Now before you do that, make sure that your free view here, that's the free view, the model is set frontal, okay, something like this, and then we select set. Now we also have a video tutorial that goes really step by step. It's in our masterclass where we explain basically every single step to design the shells mockup. All right. Now let's scroll down, and here you can see that for the layers, we already checked the maxilla, the intraoral scan, the design, the CBCT. Now let's add the CBCT bone as well. Okay, and we can also activate the measurement. And now you have two options. You can either select every single tooth and it will segment the tooth right in the middle, and here you can see how much we can perform measurement, and we can say, okay, from here to here we have to remove almost 3 millimeters of gum, and then here we also have to go up from the bone level. We need at least 2.5, okay, almost 3 here when it comes to the biological width. And so you can do this analysis for every single tooth, and you can use the slider for you to scroll through every single tooth here. And in real time, you can actually also select the tooth and you can adjust the position. So you should have the position option activated here. If it's not, maybe it's on off. Just select position. And then when you select the tooth, it should give you the arrows. And in here, for example, I can go ahead and bring it a little bit more in. I can also use rotation, right? And I can do this, for example. All right. And that's how you adjust every single tooth position. Okay, now let's go back to our design, and notice that here on the top left corner next to the menu I have the mockup and shells workflow selected. If it's not selected, maybe it's on 3D design, you'll have to select mockup and shells, and now it gives you this step by step. At this point we want to go to cut presets. Once we are done with the design, you can see I also make sure you remove all the palatinal area that you don't need. Actually, there is a quick way for you to remove that. You can go to design, mesh editor, and here you have incisal adjustment wax up. And this is great if you are trying to remove all the palatinal areas, so you can do like a shell mockup guide. Now I prefer to use the brushing tool as well, because when using the brushing tool, I'm able to adjust the gum line as well. Maybe in some areas the gum it's a little bit thicker and I have to add a little bit more on that specific tooth. Once we remove it, then we can go to cut presets, and then here you have the mockup and the shells mockup preset highlighted in red, which is what we need. And I'm gonna select shells mockup. Additionally, depending on how many units you are designing, you can select one piece or you can select 3 pieces. Let's select one piece first. Now notice that the model that I have, it's already closed. make sure that the model is closed. If it's not closed, the app will ask you to also close the model. Okay, here is choose the model condition. Mine it's closed, but if yours it's open, you'll select open, and then the app will also close the model for you. It takes a couple of moments here. Okay, and now we can select export. We can save it. If you're using the Mac, you can rename it. Okay, and then save it on the desktop, for example. So here I'm going to remove the maxilla design, and this is what I'm left with. Let's remove also the lower. So that's the mandible. Okay, and these are the shells. Okay, make sure, one more tip for you here, make sure that the shells are connected. To do that, you'll have to make sure that there is no spacing between the templates, because we need to have some sort of connection between these shells, okay? Otherwise they will be disconnected. What I recommend actually would be for you to make sure they are all, I would say, linked. It's to go to options, group all the teeth, and when you go back to tools, because you have them all linked, you can select width, and with the width plus sign, it will increase the width ratio, mesial distal, and that will create some connection between the shells. Okay, all right, so that's our shells mockup. Now just wanted to show you, once printed, how the shells look like. It's really a cost-efficient solution to Smile Test Drive, and that means you're not going to print the model, you're printing less material, and definitely you're not going to fabricate the silicone index. And so usually it's printed with a biocompatible resin. The shade here really depends on the case and the resin company, and it can be also characterized with glazing and stain. So here you can, I'd say you can make some other characterization. Now I'm going to show you before and after case report that we have on the website. Here's a beautiful example of using the shells mockup. Of course, we could also print the model with the design, but this way we avoided the silicone index. Only the 3D shells were generated and then test drive on the patient's teeth. And you can see we also glazed and stained the teeth a little bit here for a beautiful before and after result. And this is what you can do as well. Just make sure for the shells mockup that you keep a minimal thickness of 0.4 millimeters for each tooth. So you can check this with a cross-section analysis. Again, we have a video tutorial explaining all of that. But here's the case report that you can check it out on our website. It's basically under resources, case reports, and you'll find it there. Now let's move on with the next design type. Now, as you may already know, when you go to CAD presets, you can also select mockup, and if you select mockup, the app will export not just the design but also the model. Now this is another way for you to print the 3D mockup in this case, and you can see that in this case we have, let's remove the rest that it's not needed. Okay, so another way for you to export the mockup, the additive mockup, it's to print the model with the design. And in this case, it maintains still an additive approach. It's still being designed over the existing patient's teeth. And yes, it can be used as a diagnostic model. Now, in this case, you need to use bisacryl and silicone index. And it's also used at the second appointment after printing chair side for the patient. Now, I would print the model with the design whenever I cannot create the shells mockup. There are some cases where the shells mockup it's not recommended. For example, if we have very rotated teeth or very bulky teeth already, creating the shells mockup it's not going to create a beautiful result in the end. And so in those specific cases, I would just print the model with the design. I'd say both design types are great. You just need to select, I would say, or use one or the other whenever it's needed. Okay? All right. Now let's move on with other types of 3D design. So let's talk about composite veneers. You probably remember this case that we did together. We did the small simulation and the 3D design. Now again, I used the automated 3D design workflow. I'm going to show you again what types of files you'll need. Open the patient files icon here. And as you can see, really here you need the minimum files. You can start with the full picture and the intraoral scan maxilla at least. Of course, you can also add the lower, ideally have both. And again, we go through calibrate, the same options step by step that we do. Nothing different here. With the 3 points, we calibrate. Then we have the digital patient, upper and lower. We go next. And then we just save the case. All right. Now, I'm going to show you the design already done. We go through the same workflow, automated 3D design. If you're doing composite veneers type of restoration, I would recommend you to use the automated 3D design workflow simply because you have more features. Okay, let's go back to 3D layers and just get rid of the generated objects for a moment. Right, so the composite veneers offers a conservative and cost-efficient alternative to porcelain veneers. Often it's completely non-invasive. It means that you don't need to prep the tooth, and for this case specifically we didn't have to do any preparation. You can see that her teeth were already very short and she is a young patient. All right, and we increase the length, the proportions of the teeth here so we can create a better result. It's suitable as a long-term or definitive restoration, especially for young patients, and it enables you the direct injectable composite technique. Next to the menu on the top left corner, select Composite Veneers. This is the workflow that enables you to export the 2 models. Now, if you select Cut Presets, you can see that the composite is highlighted in red. And if I select composite here, if you're doing upper and lower, you'll have to select one by one, first the maxilla, then the lower mandible, and you'll have, in this case, because we're doing upper and lower, you'll have 4 models generated, but normally is 2 models per arch. Okay, so it gives you the export option, and again here I can save it. And if you scroll down, you will be able to see the 2 models. Okay, so we have a full model. You can see that all the teeth are selected, and the second model, it's called maxilla composite veneers gap. And here you will basically have every other tooth. Actually, this is the first model that we start with. Again, we have a really nice video tutorial with Dr. Diogo Alves explaining every single step of the process. So I'm going to link that video tutorial for you. It's on our YouTube channel, and you can go ahead and see every step of the process, right? So that's composite veneers type of restoration. Now let's continue with ideal 3D design. Here's a case as an example. It is a facially driven ideal design for more complex cases when you need to diagnose, treatment plan, and motivate the patient at the same time. It is ideal when you have a patient that requires significant rehabilitation, changes to the teeth position, or where there is a vertical dimension loss and necessary to restore occlusion. So this is a really good example of that, where you can see that we need to recreate the proportions of the teeth, occlusion, restore basically the majority of the aesthetic and function. It is great for planning the final prosthetic restoration because it gives the dental technician already an idea about the final position of the teeth, and it acts as the blueprint for veneers, crowns, or bridges. So again, here we use the automated 3D design workflow, and what you want to do in this case is to export the model with the design. So we cannot use the shells mockup for this specific case because the lab needs to have the model as a reference. And so in this case, we're going to use the mockup and shells workflow. We go to cut presets, we select mockup, and now the app will give me the model with the design. If you need to digitally prep some areas of the tooth so that you can have two models, one with the original teeth, so you can test drive it in the patient's mouth, and the second one ideal after preparation, then you can export two models. We do have a video tutorial explaining you how to digitally prep the tooth. We use mesh editor, either the brushing tool flatten when you select edit model, or the second option, we mark the area and then we digital remove only that area. Now let's move on with temporaries. Now you want to use temporaries even for this case. For example, I could import the post-op model, the prep model, and design over the prep teeth. And so I could actually use the same design. I just need to add the post-op model and create a provisional temporary design. So let me show you one example of that. Now I'm going to open the patient files icon so that again you can see what are the files that you need to add. So here I have the picture with the original patient's teeth before preparation using the intraoral scan maxilla original file. And if you create the project, the mockup already, based on the mockup, you can also generate the provisional after that. All you need to do is to open the patient files purple icon, the same icon that I just opened, and add the post-op model. And here you can see the prep model, right? And this is all we need to continue our design project for temporaries or for printed veneers. So let me show you the workflow here. When you go to calibrate, if you add the maxilla post-op model, you'll need to calibrate these two files. Now I'm going to keep the original here because I have the models already with a base already closed. And here under views, you'll see the iOS post-op model already available. And the way you want to calibrate these two files is simple. So basically we need to set 3 points on the original model and 3 points on the prep model. Since or if you have the majority of the teeth prepped, you want to use the gum palatinal area as a reference. In this case, the premolars and molars were not prepped on the occlusal view, and therefore I used the number 1 here for the first molar. Number 2, I selected it on the palatinal area, and the last point on the other molar. That's because the tooth is not prepped. But let's say we have a tooth that is completely prepped, so all the teeth are prepped. You would use the gum, okay? So you would select the gum area here. So for example, I'm going to select a different area just for you to see it here and here, okay? Having these 3 points means that we can then select calibrate, and more or less here we have a calibration, which is not perfect, by the way. And so what I'm going to do next is I will select Smilefy Fit and let the app do the work. So the app will actually calibrate these 2 files for me right now, because I'm not able to have a really good calibration with only 3 points. So I need this extra step, Smilefy Fit, to make sure that the 3D triangles between the 2 models are perfectly calibrated together. After that, we can open the same project and we can continue our design. All right. So this is the calibration that the app gives me, which is really good. We go next after calibration and we simply save the case. So we go back to our case management, and like I said, let's make sure here that if you already did a design, let's say a mock-up, that we use the same project to continue the workflow for provisionals or for final restorations. In this case, for printed veneers. So we want to open the project depending on what you selected. Now, if you used, let's say you did the additive mockup using the simplified mockup workflow, what I suggest you here is to use the automated 3D design workflow and continue this workflow here. And that's because you have, again, all the features available, and this one it's limited. And you can actually transfer the simplified mockup workflow in the automated 3D design. If you select automated 3D design, the app will ask you at some point if you want to use a new case or if you want to select the simplified mockup project. And so select simplified mockup if you have the project created, and it will open the same project in the 3D design. All right, let's go step by step here. If you're trying to export temporaries, what you want to do here is to customize your 3D design project over the existing patient's teeth that are already prepped. And for that, I'm going to go to 3D layers here and remove the maxilla, the original, and the segments, and have the post-op model here. Now, I'm going to remove the maxilla. Let's remove these as well for a moment. Okay. And so this is the prep model. And as you can see here on top, we have our design. And you might need to make some adjustments at this point, customize basically the design based on the prep model. And once you do that, you can then go back to cut presets, and here is the preset for temporaries. And what you will export, depending if you're doing just veneers or full crowns or bridges, you can export the temporaries for this specific 3D design. Now, let me give you some tips here. If you go back to design, you go to tools here and you have the teeth chart available. In the teeth chart, it's important to know that you can select, for example, only 3 units. Let's say we're doing a bridge design from number 4 to number 7, right? And so if you're trying to do a bridge with 3 units or 4 units, you can select only those teeth at first, then go to cut presets. It's not like all the other teeth will be removed, they are still there, but we're trying to create different files here. And if you're doing bridges and maybe individual crowns, you want to create them separately. And so cut presets, select temporaries, and here you'll have your first bridge. Okay, now depending again of if the model is open or closed, mine it's closed. As you can see, the prep model, if it's closed, select closed. If it's open, then select open, and the app will make sure that the model is closed. So this is important because otherwise the temporaries will not be generated. Make sure the model is closed. Then what you want to do next is to deselect these units. Okay, so here I'm not going to export everything now because I want to export everything at the end. So I will cancel for now, go back to tools, teeth chart, remove these units, and let's say I'm doing every other tooth because I want ears or crowns, so they are separated. And so if you want to do them separately, what you want to do here is to select 8 and 10 and maybe 12. So these are every other tooth, and then we'll select the others. Again, this is if you're trying to create separated crowns or veneers. Okay, so I'm going to select set. And now I'm going to go back to, you can see that the first 3 units are already generated. Let's go back to cut presets, temporaries, and these 3 will be created. Again, close mesh because I have the model closed. This is valid for crowns, bridges, onlays, right? Inlays, tabletops. You can generate temporaries. You just need to select, understand what to select and what to export here. So I'm going to cancel the second time because we still have to export these 2 units here. But in the meantime, just wanted to show you what we have so far. If I go all the way here, you can see that this is the only file that I have, and it's with 3 units. They're all separated. And this is the other 3 units as a bridge. And you can have these either linked because I selected all of them, okay, all of the 3, or you can have them separated like so. And we can do the rest of the teeth now. We can go to tools and just have number 9, 11, and 13. Now, for you to export the provisionals or the printed veneers, you'll have to export all of these from a different option. So even though you select export here and you try to export whatever we created so far, the app will actually not give you anything in that folder. And that's because we don't have a workflow created for provisionals yet here. You can see I selected mockup and shells because there is no option for you to select provisionals. And so I'll just cancel, and we will export all of these files from one place, from the case management, save the project, and then we'll have the option in the case management to export all the patient's files. Now, before I do that, I wanted to show you the printed veneers design, which also allows you to export these files from the case management. So basically, both the temporaries and the printed veneers files are exported all together from a different folder. So stick with me. I'm going to continue with veneers. Now, for the veneers, you want to select cut presets, and when you select cut presets, it gives you the poster model for you to select. And let's select number 5. And here what we want to do is to mark the margin. If we have the margin marked, you can export your veneer and print it as a final restoration. In order to mark the margin, first select where it says tooth visible, select it off, and then we'll select add point. And now we can select and add the point. So I'm going to select the premolar here. So the first point is added, and I'm going to continue until I have the margin. Marked. Okay, now we can adjust it from the back as well. Here you can also have the tooth visible back again, so we can see exactly the area where we need to mark. So here it would be about here. All right, now we can have, again, I'm going to select tooth visible off. Okay, and once you get here, you want to close the margin by selecting close spline. And if needed, you can also move the points. So for example, I'm able to see here and here that we have to get it closer. So I'm going to select move point now, select the point that I want to move, and you can bring it closer. Like so. Oh, this one is also not good. All right, so once we have the margin, we want to save the margin first, and then create veneer. Once you select create veneer, the app will create the veneer for that tooth, and you can continue the same process for the canine and all the other teeth. So you'll have to go back to cut presets, select cut presets, select poster model, and then choose the other tooth, in this case the canine. And you can continue by doing that, so you can mark the margin for every single tooth. This is how you then export the printed veneers or crowns. Okay, now that I'm done, I'm going to save the case. Again, we have a video tutorial, short video tutorial with Ralph explaining this step by step. If you want to see the full process, the full workflow, I invite you to our advanced course. So I'm just gonna save the case. and then select case management. Okay, in the case management, you have an icon called export. This icon allows you to export both the provisionals and the printed veneers or crowns as a final restoration. And so I'm going to select export now. Okay, and this is the last version that I just saved. Okay, and now we want to select all project files, Finder, which is iCloud, and we can save it on the desktop. Okay, let me show you what's inside and how to find the folder that allows you to export both the provisionals and the printed veneers. So you will have a folder called Smile Design. If you open this folder, you'll see here both the temporaries and the veneers and crowns. That's for printed veneers and crowns. And so let's start with this one, Upper Design. You can see that we actually already generated the margin for most of the teeth here. And the same for temporaries. If I select temporaries, you can see that these are the ones that we generated. Every other tooth. We also created one with a bridge, even though it says temporaries here. And so that's how you can export both. You'll have to go through the export option in the case management. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.